Well, late November 4, Monday night, Boeing's long strike ended because the union took Boeing's last and final offer. And as I'm about to tell you, it was an offer they just couldn't refuse. Okay, so gather around because I have a story for you, and it's a true story. And were you like me last week when suddenly, out of the blue, seemingly for no reason, Boeing's strike was on the verge of a rapid conclusion? Why did that happen? What triggered that? Well, now I know, and now you're going to know, because the Seattle Times has revealed that late last week, deep in the bowels of Boeing's Everett, Washington offices, Boeing and its machinist union leaders were negotiating into the wee hours of the morning, when suddenly and without warning, during the intense discussions, a hush fell over the room as the double conference room doors swung wide, and while bathed in a glowing white orb of light, Boeing's new boss of all bosses, CEO Kelly Ortberg, calmly entered the room with a determined yet stoic countenance on his face. Of course, both sides of the bargaining table parted ways to allow the CEO a seat at the head of the assembled group. As the uncertainty and anticipation in the room grew heavy and the silence deafening, the assembled negotiators waited for the Boeing Don to speak. Then finally, snapping the tension like a stretched rubber band, Boeing's new CEO leaned in to the gathered men and women and calmly made them an offer they could not refuse. And if they knew what was good for them, they would not refuse. And this wasn't a decision coming from Boeing's negotiation team. No, this was coming straight from the CEO himself. And it was at that moment that the CEO told the union president, John Holden, that if the striking union members rejected this last offer by Monday, November 4th, the deadline, Ortberg promised them that the next offer from Boeing would be much less generous, with potentially serious and generational consequences coming in the future, and soon. Oh yeah, with that, the CEO suddenly got the union's attention. Ortberg told them, "We can't and won't be giving any more on the next offer." And if that warning wasn't clear enough for them, he said if the union votes no, the next offer will be much more regressive and much more painful to bear. And with that, Kelly quietly stood up and left the gathered members to ponder their next move very carefully. Now, did this story happen as dramatically as I told you? Well, I like to think so. But the fact is, it did happen, and those were indeed the exact words quoted by Boeing CEO Kelly Ortberg to Union President John Holden at that negotiation meeting. And oh no, Ortberg wasn't bluffing, and Holden knew it. As John Holden told his story to the Seattle Times, he said Boeing did not specify what exactly would be taken away from Boeing's latest offer if the union were to reject it. However, Holden said it would probably mean a stark reduction across the board from the last offer. And this wasn't a game of blackjack with even odds. It was Boeing roulette, the one game where the house always wins. Holden also told the Times that it could include canceling the commitment to build the next airplane in Washington and backing away from the 3% increase, as well as losing healthcare benefits. And Holden added that Boeing said anything and everything was on the table. Anything could be taken away now, they said, piece by piece, until the union would be brought to heel. Plus, Boeing threatened to look for other areas to cut as well. Having already rejected two of Boeing's biggest offers in the history of the company twice, leaving Boeing twisting in the wind while holding out for more and more, Union President John Holden said that new CEO Ortberg's message was received loud and clear, meaning this is not indeed an offer they wanted to refuse. Having already rejected two of Boeing's biggest offers in the history of the company twice, leaving Boeing twisting in the wind while holding out for more and more, Union President John Holden said that the new CEO's message was received loud and clear, meaning this is indeed the offer you better not refuse if you want to keep your jobs. And John Holden said he received the CEO's message loud and clear. convinced that they had poked a sleeping bear long enough, and they risked waking it up and getting mauled by the beast. Holden said, "We've pushed this about as far as we can, and we've got the most that we can," which, by the way, is an unheard of amount for any union strike resolution, maybe in history. So Holden said he got the message across to the 33,000 union members, and he told them in no uncertain words to take the deal. And apparently they did. Now I want to stop here for a second and say Boeing's new CEO and boss of all bosses is exactly the CEO that Boeing has desperately needed for years. And maybe, just maybe, Kelly Ortberg is the guy that's finally going to get Boeing back on the right track. How about you? What do you think about the way Kelly handled the situation? Let me know down below. But also, kudos to the union as well, because they knew they had the upper hand on Boeing and pushed all their chips in, and won more than they ever possibly could have imagined. And they took the deal. But Union President John Holden told the Times that, quote, "The union got life-changing wages." He said, "We've never received this kind of increase in pay in our history. From 2002 to 2024, if you just add up the general wage increases, it equaled 31.5%. Our bargaining committee believes that it's time to lock in this win," Holden said. "We feel strongly that this is a victory." But after his meeting with the CEO, Holden said he held a Zoom call with about 500 union members who questioned him closely about the new offer and his recommendation to accept it. He had told them about the risk of losing the earlier gains. Holden said that the response from the people on the call led him to believe they were going to accept it, and, of course, now we know they did. However, he said there were a few members who were pushing their luck, such as Everett employee Rob Davis, a 13-year veteran of Boeing, who said he's still a no vote and dismissed the union leadership as, quote, "finger puppets of Boeing." Ouch. And then there's Andrew DeFries, an equipment operator in Everett, who said Friday he's also sticking with his no vote. He wants to hold out for more paid time off and quicker steps to progress through the wage scale. But as for others, the loss of income is biting and hard. One worker who asked to remain anonymous because of the sensitive nature of the vote told the Seattle Times he firmly rejected the offer in the previous vote, but this time he was wavering. He said, "I'm leaning more towards just accepting this point out of any fear of many things. The financial strain is starting to weigh on his family, and he worries that he can't remain out of work much longer." While he had hoped to see more movement on the company's wage offer, he also worries that if this offer is voted down, the union would risk losing more than it had gained. And he was right. He said, "I think the company's in a better position to wait this out than us," he said. Then there's Carlos de Villar, an aircraft testing technician in Renton, who said opinion is divided between people that want this to end and hopefully recover from these losses sooner rather than later, and the workers that will keep holding the line until a pension is reinstated. And still many other union workers share similar opinions on both sides. Ortberg's only previous involvement in the machinist contract talks was in September, when he personally added to the initial offering with his commitment that Boeing would build its next new airplane in Puget Sound. But before the talks broke down before last week, Union President Holden said at that point Boeing officials and union representatives were in separate rooms, with mediators shuttling between them. Holden said the management team grew frustrated with the union proposals and left the building. Holden said he then appealed to U.S. Labor Secretary Sue to salvage the talks. But it was only after she made a direct plea to Ortberg that Boeing returned to the bargaining table and eventually offered the additional 3% wage increase. However, Holden said the company was totally unwilling to budge on restoring the traditional pension it forced the machinists to give up 10 years ago. The mediators in the U.S. Labor Department brought up alternative retirement plans that provide a defined benefit but don't saddle the company with unknown, unfunded liabilities. There was no traction, Holden said. We just didn't get there. Speaking with the Seattle Times, Holden revealed for the first time that the reason he had recommended the company's first offer of a 25% wage increase over 4 years, which initiated the strike with a 95% rejection vote on September 12, was because Boeing made the offer conditional that he recommended it. Boeing said they weren't going to offer it unless he recommended it. And that stipulation was attached again to this past Thursday's last and best offer. Holden said the motive for his decision this time was deeper. It was the recognition, he said, that this is the inflection point in the strike where we could continue to stay out, but I can't guarantee that we're not going to go backward. With that looming risk, Holden shook hands with Ortberg and agreed on recommending the new offer. I'm optimistic that we've done everything we can, he said. We placed a great offer in front of our members, and it's in their hands now. And as of Monday night, the union has accepted Boeing's deal, and the strike is over. And with that, as the late great Paul Harvey used to say, now you know the rest of the story. So Boeing can go back to building planes, and the rest of the U.S. can await the results of the election that's coming up today, probably if you're watching this. And God help us all. But what do you think about the Boeing situation and the CEO giving the union an offer they can't refuse? What do you think about the job he's doing? And what do you think about the union? And that's all I have for now. So with that, don't forget to do all that YouTube stuff. And you know, I was thinking, I think it's time to bring back my old sign-off. So remember, leave the rubber on the runway and your troubles on the ground. And I will see you next time in the air. Yeah, this is Maximus.